September 2011, hundreds of people gathered and seized the parks. Anonymous occupied Wall Street. London, November 2013, thousands of people marched through Parliament wearing their famous anonymous Guy Fawkes masks. Tokyo, July 2012, 80 brave men and women stationed themselves in this Shibuya area, and they put on their famous anonymous masks and white gloves, and then they started to clean. So the global reaction to this was deafening. You should be too ashamed to call yourself an activist. You should be too ashamed to wear that mask. You should be so ashamed, you should keep that mask on in case it ever shows your face. So this is something that we can easily laugh off, but really to appreciate this strategic beauty, we have to go back, way back, about 1999, since when this first community of pranksters first started online. So they'd often take on these big corporations and media companies, and once, as a revenge against a TV station's coverage of a World Cup football match, this group of pranksters decided, we're going to actually spoil your beach cleaning campaign. So they got there ahead of, the gig, and you can imagine these big TV executives with their shiny Wellington boots and little shovels and buckets, only to turn up to an already pristine beach. And this will be all covered live by their very own TV channels. So Anonymous Japan, in their first ever on-street demonstration, was using cleaning to align themselves to this much older, bigger community. And it was also redirecting this rather frivolous desire to, want to watch a good football match to taking on the Supreme Court's decisions on download laws. In fact, this site's called 2chan, and some of you might have heard of its much later English counterpart, 4chan, and that's where Anonymous first sprouted from. Okay, but it doesn't really fit into the image of activism. So the activism we know is loud, and the inherent problems. It's too easy in this age of technology. It's too easy with the coming of clicktivism. And it's shallow. We often talk about that we're not really, engaging enough with it. We're not engaging properly. And it's noisy. It's really desensitizing us and drowning out all these interesting possibilities. And the worst thing is, it's cliched. We think we know what they're going to say before they've said it. So I want to speak about an opportunity for activism to really become more compassionate, maybe more passive, and really to be deep and sensitize us, and to allow diverse voices. I'm Lisa Ma. I'm a designer and researcher, and I have a special interest in fringe communities. So normally, what I do is I usually work in the future, and I use sort of this way of design to make scenarios and futures a lot more tangible and less, heroic? So I see a similarity between activism messaging and the way we handle our futures. Perfect futures are daunting, right? So instead of these utopians and dystopians, also grand, there's a real gap to pack them into more emotionally digestible chunks. So in my weird and wonderful world of the fringe, I get to work with amazing people like cat ladies that have so much dedication towards their cats, they're convinced they can even find a desirability for their cat parasites. And airport activists whose pride in their historical villages means that they actually give tours to stranded passengers. And ecologists whose love of nature drives them to consume unnatural invasive species. But today I really do want to talk about this project in a joystick factory. So a couple of years ago, I went to live in a joystick factory to really understand what it's like to be a Chinese factory worker, and also to understand their fears for the future now that our Christmas lists over here are filled with like iPads and Connect as opposed to joysticks. And we tend to be conscious of Chinese factory workers as this big working mass, right? So we often hear about their impressive unified scale rather than relate to them as people. And when the media describe factory salaries, they're really talking about these people in terms of economic value. And in my work with fringe communities, I really learned that concentrating on these really sensationalist extremes makes it really difficult for us to relate to them on a human scale. So I went and hung out with them, delved into their mundane events, slept in their factory dorms, ate in their canteens, and went to watch soap opera with them on streets. What I really figured out was, hang on a minute, these workers used to be farmers. They could actually teach us how to grow corn as well as make joysticks. And this really got me wondering, well, these guys used to be producers that would make food for themselves and for others, but now having migrated into these dizzying technology manufacturing facilities, these producers became consumers that merely reminisce about farming. So who's making all our food now? Back in the joystick factory, I presented to the bosses the dangers in concentrating the entire workforce only in manufacturing and the alienation of the workers from the countryside origins. So I proposed to the bosses that the workers be allowed to do part-time farming just down the road. This is called farmification. And it was really just a proposal in the policy level that would prototype how the workers, the bosses, the local chefs, and everyone else could participate. And creating this idea generated a small debate, but it was nowhere near a reaction in the scale of China. However, a parallel phenomenon was happening at the same time. China had a recent property bubble burst, and it's had huge effects on the iron manufacturing industry. With 22% being produced without any demand, one of China's largest iron manufacturers announced that it was going to put 39 billion RMB, and that's about 6.4 billion US dollars into alternatives such as pig rearing and agriculture. I thought, So all this debate about farming and about iron manufacturers abandoning what they're supposed to do was really sensational for me to see that people are really amazed by how these high investment industry was actually losing value in comparison to something really mundane like basic food making. And it was a cultural prototype where I could really see the feedback from farmification. So this simple, practical move from iron to pigs was generating a deep reflection among society. And it was making people think about this larger identity in this current trend of verticality and development. Chinese activism is evolving to avoid raising flags. In farming, simply changing your market and adapting for basic need, maybe a passive activism is happening. It makes a statement, but only through the emergent pattern, without a voice of conflict from the individual doer, against importation, against dependence, and against this current trend of being over-specialized. Over in the West, we're criticizing this trivialization of online sensationalist petitioning, names such as slacktivism. Interestingly, in farmification, where from the doer level, there's a lot less protest sentiment, but it's still very hands-on. And what this is doing is it's creating a community to sustain this public opinion. Similarly with cleaning, right? So it doesn't really fit into the activism image, but it's using this very old meme of outdoing the media to bond and maintain this community. And more importantly, it's actually showing critique of the current cliches. So in this amazing statement, I really love it, they went, "We are anonymous, and in this operation, we will be cleaning instead of clicking. Expect us." Actually, last October, cleaning saved and defended the Occupy movement from being displaced from Zuccotti Park in New York, when the mayor announced that it was going to clear the site for sanitation. So after 1 hour of unified cleaning, the activists showed that it could outdo the job of any city official. And in this way, they've actually extended the longevity of their community and the protest. So in the history of protest, we've always had this tension with technology. Are we going to be designed out by technology? Are they replacing us? And right now, maybe we're replacing our voices with technology as a sacrifice for decibels. And ironically, all these big companies, these big shots like Intel's Genevieve Bell, they're talking about things like technology for wonder. And this is where I'm going. Where's the room for wonder in technology? So we've gone through this journey of cleaning to farming, from fringes to futures. And I really hope to elbow a room for the quiet and the unusual, those people that are really trying to hone a space and take activism beyond this heroic, cliched, familiar image, and maybe into a space of wonder. What is the future of activism? Well, it's definitely not this competition of the loudest. Maybe it's something about compassionately really imagining as a way of engaging, and really constantly asking the integrity, the reason for that change, and what it really means. At the end of the day, nobody likes being shouted at. Thank you.